another edition of Broad Mind, where we explore the minds of writers, authors, and beyond. I'm your host, T.L. Rodquitz. Today's guests, I do have two, are Debbie Kilday and Colin Haskins. Debbie is a member of the National Beat Poetry Festival, NBPF, International Beat Poetry Festival, Free Poets Collective, and University of Connecticut's Osher Lifelong Learning Institute's Hydropolis Poetry Workshop Group. She is also part of the Be At, an anthology of national and international beat poets laureate. And Colin Haskins is the co-owner, founder, and executive director of National Beat Poetry Foundation with Debbie Kilday, co-founder of the National Beat Poetry Festivals and International Beat Poetry Festivals, co-founder of the Connecticut Beat Poetry Festival. He is founder of Free Poets Collective. Colin was poetry director for 22 years at the Buttonwood Tree Cultural Arts Center in Middletown, Connecticut. Colin currently hosts monthly beat poetry and music events in his Kerouac Cafe at the Lycia, I think I got that right? Yeah. Lycia and Mason Beakley Community Library in New Hartford, and is United States representative for the Women's Scream International Poetry and Arts Festival. He is also Connecticut field representative for the North American Dogman Project.
Put that in there.
Colin Haskins is a writer, poet, and poetry event promoter who is dedicated to creating new venues locally and throughout the world to bring poets, authors, artists, and musicians together. Haskins has published 7 books of poetry and is working on several more. Haskins published the Ekphrastik's Book of Poems for the New Britain Museum of American Art. Colin solely created and hosted the still ongoing spoken word series. He created and managed many programs, including One Soldier, One Poem, honoring Connecticut's past war veterans, very nice.
Yes.
World Language Night and Poetry, a fundraiser to assist animal shelters. And he has also founded the Legends of Poetry. So I thank Debbie and Colin for being on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
My first question, because I usually do ask, is when did you guys first start getting into poetry? Debbie?
I started writing poetry when I was maybe 12 years old, but I never showed it to anyone. And it wasn't until I met Colin that I started to really get into it, and it brought up, I started digging, seeing if I could find the poetry that I had written long ago, which I couldn't. So I started writing new stuff.
And Colin, how about you?
So I bumped into poetry after a lecturing circuit. So I used to lecture on Egyptian history, and then that was very successful. And I was in a coffee shop, so I'm saying this is back around, mid-90s, 94. I was in a coffee shop in Manchester, and they were, something was clearly going on. There was a bunch of young people there organized near a podium, and I had gone there a lot, but this is the first time I saw this. So I asked the kids what was going on, and they said that they were protesting the open mic that night because, we'll just say, for lack of freedom of expression. And so they were all doing, they would approach the podium when they were called up and then stand there and sit back down. So that was my first encounter with poetry, and I knew it was something I was interested in right then and there.
Wow.
So back in 94, I guess.
So what is the difference between poetry and beat poetry?
We were just talking about that. And Debbie and I talk about this all the time. Why don't you go and answer that one, Debbie?
Beat poetry has no form. Conventional poetry has all kinds of rules, forms that people go by, to create whatever they're writing. And as far as we're concerned, it's free verse and style, and you can basically talk about anything you want, whatever's on your mind. And that's where Jack Kerouac, that started the original beat generation, in the 40s, he saw around him that people were being squelched. You know, they couldn't express themselves freely. And he went to the jazz bands. You know, he would go see jazz bands at night, and people would say to him, you know, what are you doing hanging around with those bums, you know, in the coffee houses? And that made him think all the more, I'm going to go there all the time. I'm going to have those people play with me. I'm going to talk with them. I'm going to have them have a say, because they've never had a say before. And that's how it started.
And say, so it's more like a free form thing, like
Yes.
between beat poetry and jazz in its own way.
I would say jazz is an inseparable partner to beat poetry. We continue that today. We just had a jazz musician, George Porto, play with us at our last event. And it was great pairing. And he plays jazz behind the poetry in the same fashion as Kerouac. And if you YouTube Kerouac, you'll see that. It's right there.
I just want to let you guys take over the conversation and talk about beat poetry in your very free way,
Well,
if you'd like.
I met Colin about 9 years ago, but 10 years ago, we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary. I mean, it is the 10-year anniversary this year of the National Beat Poetry Festivals that Colin started, and he can talk about that.
So it started back in 2008, and it started off as originally a one-day festival. And then the venues grew, as you read earlier on the bio. We were at the Mark Twain House and the Harriet Beecher Stowe House, Charter Oak Cultural Center, Webb Dean Stevens Museum. So this all evolved, and there's so many more. This all evolved into ultimately 8 days, 8 consecutive days, and it was in Hartford and Middletown and Wethersfield. And poets came in. I had a nice team of people I was working with at the time, so we were able to bring in poets from all over the world, all over America at that time. They weren't then at that time international, but as far away as California, and you know, they got here on their own, just out of the love of this, because beat poetry hadn't had good representation until the late 50s. And what of course here 10 years later find is there's a hunger for it. The culture had a little gap, but it by no means stopped. I would say, if you do any research, you know, you were latent years from the 70s to the 90s. It just sat there latent. I didn't say dead, but latent, and we resurrected it.
Well, people, they need a voice, especially the world today, the way things are. People want to express themselves, and they're told they aren't able to. Don't step on anybody's toes, you know, don't say this or don't say that. And that's where beat poetry gives them that freedom. Not only with spoken word, but with music. And we have a lot of different types of music, a lot of different people come to play with us. I mean, we have a long list. They want to play with us every month, but we try to give everyone a chance, you know. And the other thing is, we try to give everyone a chance that's been overlooked in the past.
That's the important thing.
You know, there's a lot of talent out there, and we bring them in. You know, like, they never got any recognition all their lives, and we bring them in and we let them have their time.
That's where the laureates came from. As we started to have venues, we had the idea to franchise this out several years ago, and it was very successful. We're all over the country. We're working, we're in a lot of parts of Europe, we're in Japan, and the idea was that at one point, one of our team members pointed out, you know, we are the largest celebration of beat culture in world history. And at that time, we were already international. We said to ourselves, Debbie and I, you know, we brainstormed, we said, we have our own beat poet laureates then. If we are this indeed, then we are our own authority. We'll make beat poet laureates and honor these people that have never been honored. And with a little research, we found out that we were the first ones to create any kind of international poet laureate, period.
Wow.
The British and American Poetry Societies had hundreds of years to do this, and they just didn't innovate it. And we did. And we did for Jack Kerouac.
Yeah.
'Cause we
Who was
stand
an
on great
innovator
shoulders here.
himself. So
We stand on great shoulders here.
Wow.
Jack Kerouac was the one that he first called it the Beat Generation, and the reason why he did is he saw people poor, you know, they were hungry, and he was what he said was he was sympathetic to
Yes.
all these people that had been overlooked all their lives. So he was in New York City at that time, and he met Allen Ginsberg and William S. Burroughs, and so they all formed this. You know, Jack Kerouac said, "This is beat. This is beat," and then Ginsberg said, "That's what we should call it. You know, this is the Beat Generation," and that's how it started with them. And people, they became famous, but they never thought of themselves that way. And I saw this little film of Jack Kerouac where he says, "I'm known all over the world now. People are saying my name, buying my books, and I don't even have 10 cents to go buy myself a cup of coffee."
Wow.
See? I mean, that's how ironic, you know, it was.
It cost them $3 today, imagine.
Is that where the name Beatniks kind of comes from? Or?
Beatniks,
No.
no, that was
That's a little-
something that society created,
Yeah.
which kind of ruined, you know, like what the message was from the Beats. But, you know,
We have a story from Paul Richmond, and the
he's the Massachusetts Beat
Beat
Poet.
Poet Laureate. So he talks about a festival up there, and we won't get specific with it, and it's a Kerouac thing. And one of the stories is that Kerouac, later in his life, had gone to a poetry reading, and it was a beatnik night. And he went there, and everybody was wearing, of course, the beanies. I'm sure you almost thought, are we going to show up with beanies, striped shirts, and black specs? And everyone was doing this, and they were snapping and
Oh, yeah.
daddy-o-ing and skiddly-wop. And so Kerouac got up on stage, and he's dressed not unsimilarly to I am today. The man just wore button-down shirts, and he didn't really draw attention to himself. And he gets up there, no one recognized him. Did they boo him? I think they booed him.
Get off the stage.
Get off the stage.
We're waiting for Jack Kerouac.
We're waiting for Kerouac. And so the idea of, they never liked that term, beatnik. They were beats. That's how we call ourselves. And
Beat down.
beat down and just downtrodden. Sympathy for the downtrodden. And that's what he didn't want. And he reclused after that experience. And he sort of faded away until he died.
So society kind of categorizes everything into
He got it wrong.
things.
And then
Yeah.
culture, the popular culture.
Yeah.
So pop was just starting. And then, of course, the hippies took from there. They
Yeah.
took from the beatniks. The beatniks, not really on cue.
Wow.
Looking at you guys.
So a lot of musicians came out of this Beat Generation. And this was right as the hippies were coming into their own. And Bob Dylan,
Dylan.
he's like the original beat musician.
No, Bob, we'd give you an award, but we know you won't show up to get it, so we're just sorry. We're going to have to move. I'm sorry for that.
So we incorporated in 2016 the National Beat Poetry Foundation, and but we had started the festival end of it, the national and the international festivals in 2015. And people, I mean, I get emails, you know, we get calls. People contact us all different ways. A woman from New Zealand, you know, they want to come here and be at our monthly event,
Wow.
which, you know, is in Little New Hartford, you know, but they don't know that, I guess. But they all want to be.
Last year, our first international poet laureate was last year. She came from Greece and spent almost 2 weeks here. And this year, and
Chris
this is always
Velisario.
Chris Velisario in Greece. This year it's Jael Urib from the Dominican Republic, and she runs Women's Scream International Arts and Poetry Festival for abuse prevention. She'll be here, and we'll see about next year. But you know, we're bringing them in from around the world, doing some tourism for Connecticut.
And Benji Bjorklund from Sweden is coming this September, our 3-day festival and awards ceremony. He's coming in from Sweden, and he's all excited.
Yeah.
Because he was, a long time ago, he spent time in jail for smoking hashish in Turkey. He was thrown in jail for a lifetime sentence at that time. And that movie, what was it, Midnight
Express.
Yeah, Midnight Express. He was one of the characters in that movie where they busted out of the prison in Turkey.
The movie
And-
got it wrong at the end, by the way, just
Yeah.
spoiler alert.
Yeah.
It's not historically accurate.
A lot of films aren't.
But so when we named him the Sweden's Beat Poet Laureate, he started crying. He started crying, saying that I've spent my whole life speaking about all these things, you know, that matter in the world, and no one's ever listened to me before you guys.
Over 50 years.
Yeah.
Same thing with Chrissa.
Yeah.
This is why we did that. To honor those that really haven't had the proper recognition, the voice, and you can't honor yourself. I guess today you can, but you shouldn't honor yourself.
We haven't honored ourselves.
No.
We're too busy working, I think.
I just want to ask you, Colin, I noticed on your biography, which was really fascinating and really good, what is One Soldier, One Poem in honor of Connecticut's past war veterans?
Wow. So One Soldier, One Poem was a one-time event back in the original Gulf War. And I'm not going to throw a date out there. I'm not good with dates. But back in the original Gulf War, this was going on, and of course this was concurrent with my ongoing poetry. And the loss was tragic. You know, as any of these stupid conflicts, any war is tragic, and you know, people die.
Yeah.
And so here in Connecticut, I thought, you know, wouldn't this be good if here we are in this new war, if we could honor some of the dead? Well, that sounds easier than it is to accomplish, because the government doesn't release names of the soldiers to the public. So we were lucky enough at that time in our circle of artists to have several lawyers who got these names. Well, and then I had to, out of the blue, not just myself, but a whole list of, we separated the names, we had telephone numbers, and just call these people out of the blue, these families. And say, we want to honor your son, your wife, your daughter, you know, your husband, your father, your mom. We want to honor them. And when I did it, and I don't know what the others' experiences are, but you know, the tears were on the phone. So we gathered at the Portland Middle School in Portland, Connecticut. We wrote these poems, invited the families there, and then one by one we had the pictures of the soldier up on stage. Of course, it was a snowstorm, but it did not stop the place from being packed. It was in January. And we then, as individuals, on our own, honored one poem for one soldier that had fallen for the family. And it was incredibly moving. Incredible. I don't have the means to reproduce it today, and there's so many wars, I think people are numb to it today. But this was a big deal back then, if you remember the original Gulf War.
I think you should read that poem.
Debbie wants me to read a poem.
By all means.
I think if you want to
It's a
hear a
short
poem, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to chew up time. If you want to hear the poetry,
No.
come down to the venue and they'll provide you with the information for there. But I guess this goes along this. I wrote this on December 4th, 2015. If I bury dreams, joy grows. If I bury seeds, life grows. If I bury words, wisdom grows. If I bury compassion, kindness grows. But if I bury bullets, hatred grows. And then I have to bury more.
Wow.
Some applause out there from the audience, please.
That's strong. Wow.
That's a lot like what it was like for the One Soldier, One Poem. It was. I'm glad you asked about that. That was a really good one. When I worked with Fidelco, that was another nice one at the Buttonwood Tree. I did poetry where we.
Oh, I was going to ask you about poetry.
Poetry, PAW, poetry was to benefit some animal shelters that did not put animals down, and we split that up also with Fidelco.
Oh.
Fidelco, we were going to have dogs for adoption and cats, but Fidelco, their dogs can't be with other dogs. So they lined up the dogs like sphinxes in their, at the time, red capes. And this was way before this popularity of assisted animals. They were the only ones doing that. And as the poets would approach, the dogs were just lined up, and that was to benefit dogs and cats and Fidelco. What a great organization.
Nice.
And I was able to work with the American Theater and the American School for the Deaf. That was a great experience too,
Wow.
through the years. It's a little more ambitious than Debbie,
You've
wasn't
done a
it?
lot. No, you've done
Debbie
a lot.
does everything now.
Oh.
Thank God. Really, really, she does all the organizing, all the emails, because I don't email. Do not email. So she really, it couldn't be where it is today without her efforts. So I certainly had the reins for many years, but what a team player she is. And you do the Kappa thing, you'll be at the Big E. You can promote that, right?
It's going to be the 13th year of the Connecticut authors being up at the Big E. And I'm there every day for 17 days.
Go see her. Buy
You'll
a
see
book.
me in the Connecticut building.
All 17 days. Wow. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, but I wasn't sure if you just wanted to talk about the poetry or
No,
not.
no.
Well,
ask
there's
her.
going to be several poets. They're going to be having their books there.
Yeah.
Eileen Elbrizio is one,
Mm-hmm.
who has done a lot of work with Colin.
Oh, yes. I
She's
feature
from
her.
Windsor, too.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
Oh, she moves around.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's originally from Windsor.
But she keeps her husband on. Move around because you have someone new. Eileen doesn't do that.
But about how many authors would you say that go
Well,
to
I'm
that?
just starting to sign them up for this year, but usually
past.
between 40 and 60. One year we had 99 authors, and they all scrambled to be there, show their books and greet the public. It's exciting, About over 100,000 people walk through that building every day for 17 days. I mean, you can't get much better as far as looking for contacts,
Yeah.
And it's usually in the Connecticut State Building
Yeah.
that they have. And there's Connecticut Day. Can you explain that?
Connecticut Day, they celebrate Connecticut, all things Connecticut, and all the different foods that Connecticut is known for, like the lobster rolls, the buttered lobster, hot lobster rolls, not cold. And, they have fruit pies and jams and all kinds of stuff. And we are very lucky. Each year we have John Pogson that plays Mark Twain. He's been doing that for years. He actually looks like Mark Twain now. He doesn't even need makeup. He really looks like the,
Kind of
Mark
grown
Twain.
into his character.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he comes and, people get a big kick out of that.
You say like there's like dignitaries or not dignitaries,
Oh yeah,
but
all the
like
state,
politicians and
all
different
the,
people.
yeah, all the state representatives come on Connecticut Day.
So getting back to the poetry thing, because we are running out of time already. Where's the latest event taking place?
Our latest event is going to be July 7th, and it's at the Beakley Community Library in New Hartford,
That's monthly, same time,
Yep.
same place.
3:30 to 5:30. And we're going to be having some interesting people. Shaw Isaacson,
from the Lakeville Journal.
Dory Green. Yeah, Shaw is a journalist at Lakeville Press, is that?
Yep,
You would know
the
more
Lakeville
than-
Journal.
Oh, Lakeville.
Dory's a fantastic artist and entrepreneur.
And Richard Fox is coming.
From Boston area.
From the Boston area.
suburbs, Yep.
And
And our musician,
is Gail Gardner.
Gail Gardner, former Connecticut state minstrel musician, and I'm on 2 of her CDs. She's
Mhm.
fantastic.
He does spoken word on her CDs.
Well, Gail wanted me to. I said yes.
And so that's the next event. And then I'm off to the Big E for 17 days pretty soon.
She leaves, and I have to run the festival in September at the same time, which is our big event. So that's
No,
our
Big
3-day
E is right
festival.
after.
We're at Miranda Vineyards this year in September. We'll be there the last Friday of the month, because usually we're first
August
Saturdays.
31st.
So last Friday of the month, then we're at the Beakley every first Saturday of the month, 3:30 in New Hartford, 10 Central Ave. And our Sunday place has yet to be determined.
Yeah,
It's
we try to
ongoing.
change it up each year where we're going to have the festival events. But we have so many people, all these, the Beat Poet Laureates, I mean, they're going to be there, I think. They want to come back. All these people,
They form their
can't-
own group on
Yeah.
us. Yeah, they have their own family, the Beat Poet Laureates, and they don't even consult with us anymore. They're clearly going to take this over. That's okay. That's okay.
Okay. I wanted to explain about your website. It's the National Beat Poetry Foundation.org. It's and you have a Facebook group, which is the National Beat and International Beat Poetry Bulletin Board, and a Facebook page, National Beat Poetry Foundation Incorporated, INC. And you can find Colin at Colin Haskins on Twitter, NBPF at Beat Poetry Fest, YouTube, guys hit it all, National Beat Poetry Foundation Incorporated, and his email is nbpf15@gmail.com. And with that, I want to thank Colin Haskins and Debbie Kilday for being on the show.
Thanks,
Thank you for
Tracy.
being a gracious host. Thank you for the editor. You're doing a great job back there.
You have an absolutely beautiful heart, and I wish you so much
Thank
luck
you,
with,
dear.
with
Oh my
the
God.
future
Yes.
endeavors of poetry.
Thank you today. I really appreciate this.
I really appreciate this, and I hope our audience does too.
Thank you.
Debbie. I
You're a
wish
great
you,
audience today. Thank you.
I wish you much luck, and hopefully Kappa will go very well at the Big E.
Yeah, it does. It will.
This has been Broad Mind. I am your host, T.L. Rockwitz. Until then.